Hey everybody, welcome back to 13 Nights of the 13th Floor. This time I'm joined by Callie Matthews and Troy Price. If you listen to the podcast, you'll recognize them from our Food Conspiracies episode and our Premonitions episode respectively. And we're going to be going over 13 forms of horror-related literature that we are fond of. And I'm going to start off. I think that Bram Stoker's Dracula is a must-read. It really started the vampire genre. It's certainly not the last vampire-related book on my list, but it's definitely in high regard or high esteem from me simply because, one, it really kicked off the genre. Until then, vampires were really just like Slavic, Baltic ghosts instead of these, concrete blood-drinking demons. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Number one is Dracula. How about you, Callie?
My first would probably actually have to be one that you had touched on the 13th Floor podcast. Is The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, because if you look at it, it is just a terrifying story. There's really just not a lot of positivity. It's someone who is wanting to obtain something and they just can't. And there is no happy ending, really. So
the original version.
I think it might be too reflective of life right now. But.
Yeah, the OG version. There's two ways it could end. Either she dies and, unlike every other mermaid, acquires a soul and goes to heaven. So that's kind of nice. Or she just dies and turns to sea foam, and that's literally oblivion after that, which is terrifying to think of. In Hans Christian Andersen's universe, there's a just and loving God, but he's got no time or patience for mermaids. So yeah. How about you, Troy?
Oh, well, I love short form fiction, and my first recommendation is something obscure from the early 70s. It's called Strangely Enough by C.B. Colby, and it had an impact on me. It's just a collection of short stories, and two have impacted me to this day that I remember it, and I read it when I was 8 or 9.
Wow, I've never heard of that. I gotta give that a chance. I'm gonna put all these in the description for the video too. So anybody interested in checking it out, real easy to search on Amazon by just cutting and pasting it into your search engine. For me, and I'm gonna follow it up with another vampire one, just so I can kind of close it out. Just as Dracula changed vampires from more like ghosts to something more concrete, Anne Rice's entire series really turned them into something more modern and urban and, I hate to use the word because it's applied to everything thanks to marketing now, but sexy. Vampires used to just be ugly, disfigured demon creatures up until that point. And now every vampire movie, just about every vampire story, the Sookie Stackhouse series, just all of them, even Blade, which is anti-vampire, is still, it's sort of in the shadow of what Anne Rice really did. How about you, Callie?
Definitely. That was one I definitely considered throwing on the list. I think throwing back to another old school one, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. It's like, can you not? It's just the fact that she was so young. She was in her late teens when she was inspired to write this is incredible, and sort of about, creature and the scientists who both have gone through hardships, and they're both, trying to find some love in the end there, and things go a bit crazy.
How about you, Troy?
Oh, my second one again is another collection of short stories. This one by Stephen King. It's called Night Shift.
Oh, I read that one.
Yeah, there's two particular stories there that impact me. One is the boogeyman, and to this day when I go to sleep I have to make sure the closet door is closed, and the other is gray matter, and with that I slowly drink beer now. So those are two stories from that.
I have to check under the bed for similar reasons.
Absolutely.
For me, a big one that I highly recommend is Tales of the Hellbound Heart. And all of Clive Barker's works are good. But Tales of the Hellbound Heart is a novella, real quick read. I mean, you could probably knock it out in a couple of hours. But it was the basis for the adaptation that became known as Hellraiser, which in turn became a whole series. And it does differ pretty wildly from the film, but in ways that are really enjoyable. And it really opened my eyes to sort of the splatterpunk genre, which highly also recommend people dipping their toe in that water, because it is simultaneously terrifying, a little bit gross, but not overwhelmingly so. So yeah. How about you, Kelly?
Awesome. I like this is in one I found, Brothers Grimm, The Wolf and the Seven Young Goats. Nice read. It's pretty much a great cautionary tale for not being tricked by the wolf in sheep's clothing, and also a little bit of vengeance too from a mama goat. So it sort of has a little bit of everything there for you to have some life lessons from.
How about you, Troy? I've never read that, by the way.
Gotcha. I'm going to reference Stephen King, in my opinion's best work, and it's overlooked, called The Dead Zone. There's TV shows, a movie after it, but the book itself, I believe that after his reputation of just selling out, fades, that book is going to be rediscovered and probably brought into the canon more so than Carrie, his original book, was. Dead Zone's that good if you've not read it.
Wow.
I'll definitely have to do that.
I thought I would shake up the more adult-themed literature for this one and just recommend, even though it's probably pretty cringy reading it now, but just for everybody who's a kid or kid at heart in the audience, I was obsessed with the Goosebumps books when I was little. I don't know how many of them I read. In fact, I wonder how many words, like if you did the word count of all the books I read, what they would stack up to all the non-Goosebump books I've read. I bet it was a big chunk of the words I've read over the course of my life. So yeah, the Goosebumps by R.L. Stine. How about you, Kelly?
Yeah, that, just a side note, sort of piggybacking off of yours, I definitely loved reading those too as a kid. Usually like a friend and I would go out onto this golf course and read them out on the golf course and eat some beef jerky. So that was sort of a fun time in summer thing that we did. And also just sort of staying on the nostalgia train there. My last one would be The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. That one has a really a nice warm type of memory for me, even though it's scary, and I did not particularly like watching the cartoon too much as a kid, but it was a tradition that my dad and I had where every Halloween we would watch the cartoon back from 1940s, I believe it was. And it's got romance, it's got drama, it has the supernatural, so it's got a little bit of everything for everybody.
Yeah, I distinctly remember that one. And I even now, I think it's influenced my nightmares. Because a lot of times if I have a nightmare, I'll be being chased by something. I'll almost get to whatever the safe zone is, and then I don't make it. And that's always what I think of when I think of that cartoon. Because, there's just such suspense. Because, like, oh, get to the bridge. And then he doesn't get to the bridge. So, yeah, how about you, Troy?
Well, there are some quality horror comic books out there, some comics out there, and Venom is a bad guy to Spider-Man. He had his movie recently, and Venom and Carnage stuff is pretty good when it's done right. There's lots of Carnage collection.
Those were my favorite comics growing up. No joke.
See, yeah, I think those are pretty good right now. You've got, you just Google horror comics and there's going to be all kinds. This is a little bit of a side note, and it's a cheat, I know, but it's obscure, so it's worth something. Before the Venom movie that came out and is big, there was a fan film called Truth in Journalism, and it's on YouTube. You can just search it. And it's the most horrific, most awesome interpretation of the Venom character outside of the Marvel universe. But it's like, if you're hearing this right now, search Truth in Journalism, Google it, and you're either going to find this short film or a TED Talk, and it's not the TED Talk, okay?
Awesome. Yeah, I got to check that out.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Wow. Capping us off at number 13, unless I miscounted, is I love all of H.P. Lovecraft stuff. They're really great stories. a lot of people, their favorite tends to be Call of Cthulhu, but for me, hands down, The Thing in the Tower. By today's standards, the twist probably is cliche, but when I first read it, I was like, "What?" And it sort of blew my mind. It was a great story. The Rats in the Walls also is an honorary mention. So yeah, anything by Lovecraft is good, but for me, that's my favorite. All right. Well, that caps us off with 13 epic forms of literature for Halloween. So thank you both so much for joining me on all this.
Yeah,
Happy to.
Yeah. And we're going to do the Keep It Strange thing, even though it's always harder with a camera. So until next time, we hope that you can
Keep it strange.
It's always harder. I don't know why. It should be easier.